I started feeling that can we get out of the literal meaning of words and still create a meaning or create some sort of communication?
Welcome back to the current art podcast. I'm Yaching, and this week I'm at the artist studio in Hudson, Lower Manhattan, New York, Ali Motamedi's studio.
Yes.
Ali, could you please tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thanks so much. Yachin, I am Ali. I'm originally from Iran. I've been here in the US for about 15 years. I work as an artist and university professor. I work at the boundary of text, image, and I teach analytics, digital communications courses. And I'm here in New York area for about 8 years, working with so many great people. And recently I, had the pleasure to talk and get familiar with Yachi and the podcast. So I'm happy to, get to know more about, what's happening here and also share my ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, we're going to have a very exciting conversation about immigration, migration, language, and a lot of other stuff. So let your imagination flow and let your language flow. Stay tuned. Like, how do you become the artist today at that your history? But your history must also interwoven with the history of this land. Maybe also the places that you have lived before.
Correct.
So I think
Yeah.
there are just a lot of things to discover and many details to talk about. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I really uh, feel it's central in my work, or at least it's important,
Yes.
is nomadism.
Mm.
So nomadism, uh, literally means that going from place to place, no fixed location, right?
Yeah.
But it can be also a state of mind, you know, and thinking about, okay, if this is the fixed definition of something, or I can hop into another version from time to time to rediscover it. So I think this all goes back maybe to my story of immigration, or even deeper than that, go into my personality. So both, goes hand in hand.
Yes.
So whenever I look at my work, it's all about immigration, identity, and also when I talk about travel is a sort of immigration or migration. If you can say. So,
I think that's a very interesting concept because nomad life is kind of a concept that happens in the IT world that people don't have so much belonging so they can work everywhere on their laptops from everywhere in the world. But it can also
digital nomads, you mean, right? Those kind of.
nomads, yeah.
It's a good point. It's a very new version of that in this era, right? But
Yes.
before that, we did have it.
Yeah.
Gypsies, right? Or even before that, before becoming a settler as a human, thousands of years ago, we were just hunting, going from place to place. There was no city, and then farming happened. We started to settle in, and everything changed from farming, agriculture, gradually industrial world, and then talking about the digital nomadism that you said, it's a very new, regression to what we used to have thousands of years ago.
That is so true. Like, it also reminds me, you said gypsy, but also reminds me of Mongolian, for example. that people don't have a fixed settlement or their home can be mobile. Yeah.
Correct.
And then we kind of going back to that, but our income or our idea creation doesn't fix it to that specific place, because I can imagine the I think in our history book, like high school history book, that we learn why those Mongolian nomads, they're changing the places because of, like, for example, the domesticated animals need new fresh food to eat, so they change the locations to ensure that their animals, livestock, has enough grass to eat.
Okay.
And or they the land that they're farming is became tired, so they changed the land. But I think nowadays nomads, it could also be resource oriented. Like, for example, in New York, there's more art resources, but it also could be a personal preference, like you said. It's something that related to your personality, that you wanted to be that place because of very specific personal choices, personal reasons.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes back very deeply to the concept of our relation with the land.
Yes.
As a human, I mean, Billy, you talked about Mongolians and how, you mentioned like tired, that the earth or land gets tired, like it needs some re-energizing itself to get cultivated again.
Yes.
So I think this is the concept that is missing in our life, because we overuse everything.
That is true.
Going back to your question in terms of my relation with the land, so I can talk about like a starting point. Let's say Iran, my original homeland, right? My connection with the country, with the starting point has changed, no doubt.
Yes.
Not just me, anyone who started departing from the A point, right? My connection, my relation can be, in a way or the other, changes. I mean, this is true for everything. You travel, you go out of town, and then you start self-reflecting about how my week went go, how's my life going. Self-reflection start by departing.
Yes.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of nomadism in my work. Talking about, like, this work that is behind us, alphabets writing. It wouldn't happen without this journey of immigration.
Yes. So your interest in Farsi language, or using the Farsi language as a tool to create art, is after you immigrate from Iran to the United States. That happens afterward, right?
My understanding about not only Farsi alphabets and letter and language, but generally the whole idea of writing and reading communication tool has changed, because I'm in a different context. I need some other way of connecting with people. When I'm talking to you, you are a non-Farsi speaker.
Yes.
You have a different relation. This kind of feedback puts me in a different direction. Push me into something new that I really appreciate.
Yes. So, in fact, while your audience doesn't understand the alphabet, they have to be able to imagine another kind of context, or they are being pushed to jump out of their comfort zone, like cultural comfort zone, to connect with your work.
That's so true. That's so true. And I think this is what I know the most. My mother tongue, right? The language. But this new position gives me a new perspective. So I see something that my other version in Iran consider two versions of me. One is still living back home, one is here. Two parallel Ali, right? That other version wouldn't understand this, but I do, because I'm living this kind of immigrant, journey. So I'm making it very sci-fi narrative.
Can you explain to me that your process of working with Farsi alphabet, how do you start it? What is the rule of this work and what's the name of this work?
So if you allow me, let me just go a few steps back in terms of my relation with creative writing.
Yes.
Right? So I have been a writer in a very conventional way since so many years ago. Writing in a very personal perspective, reaction, critical examination of the world surrounds me, right? But gradually I started feeling that this language, which is Farsi in the beginning, with some translation, is still one approach. Kind of very, very promising, very enjoyable, but at the same time very limited, right? So literal meaning of language, not just Farsi, so many other languages, can be limiting. Translation is also something that cannot convey the message very easily. So since a few years ago, I started thinking about where am I standing in terms of conversation, writing? Where is writing now in my life? Where am I standing? So playing with the idea of writing, I started feeling that can we get out of the literal meaning of words and still create a meaning or create some sort of communication? I was doing I have had a daily practice of just writing, right? Either on my notebook or on my laptop, right? Gradually I started thinking that writing is a way for me to think logically or emotionally, or sometimes it can be a way to get rid of thinking in a very conventional way. Some sort of liberating energy.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to have a literal meaning. You can just type. You have a physical interaction with drawing. Is drawing also a writing? Is painting also a writing? Is scrambling and some sort of doodling part of the writing? The answer is yes. It can be.
Yes.
And I started enjoying the whole process even more and feeling like that, okay, there's something that I should discover. So it became part of my writing daily practice.
Yes, I was just talking about this topic with an artist friend this morning, that we were thinking about, nowadays, artists, any kind of field, we start with a very strong intention, like a plan, a roadmap about how to make one specific work. And sometimes I feel like it loses the touch of the intuition. For example, I want to type writing this Farsi letter. Maybe I don't know exactly where does it go, or I do not know why exactly I'm wanting to do that, but this is like an impulse, right? I think that is a very brave way to deal with art at today's academic and over expanding culture. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, this kind of reaction, maybe coming from my visual or photography practice.
Yes.
Maybe. Or I feel like sometimes, one of the questions I always had was what is the connection between my writing and my visual works.
That's interesting.
And I didn't want really to force an answer to it until it might happen, because there's so many stuff are happening in subconscious levels. And
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can active that subconscious level of thinking or subconscious level of anything by turning off our logic mind a little bit.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Or when you're talking about logic, maybe we should explain a bit on that, or better understand each other. Are you talking about some step-by-step, algorithmic, very mathematical way of
Yes.
thinking? Okay.
I think so, but it's also very chronological. So, I think that logic is based on, oh, I grew up here, and I did certain things in my life, and I went to this school, I learned this skill, for example, photography.
Then I have to
Yeah.
make this conclusion or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically a reason and cause logic. So reason and cause, they closely tied together. But I think making art, no matter it's imagery or based on writing words, it's always have this power of jumping the time and space. So I think the fact of reason and cause logic doesn't necessarily apply to an artwork.
That's for sure. I think that's the whole point about, like, at least I believe, the whole point of art is this, trying to create a new paradigm, new patterns, even if it seems very irrational in the beginning.
Yeah, breaking the logic.
Breaking to create a new loop, or create a new branch, or create whatever you want to call that.
I think that makes sense to me. And then, do you have a name for the work that you were doing, like the work that you just described?
You mean those large prints, or that?
The large prints.
It's a sort of like, part of this project called Farsi Flows.
Interesting.
Yeah, and also these are some works that I did before getting into this new patterns of 32 letters of alphabet. But the whole project, if I want to call a label, give a name to it, is Farsi Flows, because everything started with some play of mixed ink and paper.
Interesting.
That's why it's the flows of Farsi, and also the rhythm of the words is also what's interesting for me, because in a book that I'm also working,
So
parallelly to this project, the first section of the book started with letting go, or I call it losing. Actually, losing. I'm sorry. LOOSING, which is it's kind of similar in terms of meaning to losing, LOSING, but losing is more physical compared to losing. Losing is just missing something, as we know, right? But losing is like when you have like a rope, and you just let's get off like tightness of it, just to give some space so that more dynamic, more movement happens on the other hand of it, on the other side of it, if that makes sense, right? So loosening is more physical action. So I call that section, beginning of that writing, loosing, because I think in here the context is language and Farsi, and I started losing Farsi, and as you see, the mix of ink on the paper are getting loosened, so that we get into some new patterns of things here. This is like a pretty obvious movements of ink on the paper And this loosening gave me a new ideas of breaking the rule. As you said.
Understand. So the rule of this flows of Farsi, part of the rule is like you have 32 Farsi letters, but you loosening them in some way that they are more abstract when it's on the paper. So you arrange them in a way on the wall and then letting the audiences to interpret them as they wish, but you don't give any clues. Is that how you start with this work?
I mean, I can put it this way that almost what you said is true. I can just add into it that I'm inviting the audience or the viewers to play with me, to play with each other.
Yes.
And this is not a statement, this is not a thesis, this is not something like a discovery.
Yes.
I don't call it that. It's just a new way of looking at a standard, conventional alphabet. And let's say one of the recent people that visited my work was like a second generation Iranian, not born in Iran, obviously born in Europe. And he knew Farsi a little bit.
Yes.
But just being familiar with sound and a little bit of alphabet, but not exactly to recognize it. He was thinking about how, I mean, let me also mention this. One of the things that we talked about, maybe that helps as an example, was that what size of paper did you use? I said it's like 8.5 by 11 letter size in the US. He said, is it A4? Like in Germany and also back in Iran, we use A4. I said, not exactly, but that's very close. He said, okay, and then we talked about accessibility and a standard, the notion of a standard. I said, this is the most standard and also most accessible size of paper in the US. That's why he used it.
Yes.
He said, that's interesting that this size of the paper is not the standard or the most accessible in Europe, in Germany.
Yes.
He said A4 is the one. But you were discussing, he was not, saying that in a negative or positive way, we were talking, also very good point.
Yes.
Very good point.
And a very fine detail as well.
Exactly, because that location, the connection coming from a different location and context, was giving me this idea that, okay, although this is about universal language and tool, some aspect of representation might be very, fine and something that can be noticed only from other contexts.
Interesting. So that's he mean that, for example, everywhere has a very different standard. Okay, this standard, it can also be symbolic. Like now we are talking about the standard of paper size, but we also have a set of standards for everything else in different continents, in different countries, even maybe in different cities and districts, that we have certain standards of doing something.
Yeah, and I think the word standard or the notion of it is multi-layered, meaning-wise, because a standard can give the highest amount of accessibility, while at the same time it can dictate some sort of norms that we don't want to follow necessarily.
Yes, I understand. So, for example, in your case, you use the letter size of the letter to present your work. It's the most accessible paper that you can get. Like, that's the most easiest way. If you go for another size, it might be add another complicated layer to your work, or I don't know if that's good or bad, but let's say in this case, it's most convenient to use the letter size.
And I should mention that there's a notebook here, next to me that you see.
Yeah.
This notebook is the one that I literally used when I was asking people in the public to reflect to Farsi letters,
Yes.
either in the street or museum or classroom or coffee shop.
That's
And
interesting.
these part of this work is exactly the same artworks
Yes.
done by the people. So the reason for choosing that was, again, having some sort of not too big, not too small, because it's a sense. Going back to the concept of the book, some sizes are intimidating, some sizes are too negligible. So I was like, I confirmed that I have followed my own judgment to come up with the size that is most accessible. So yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah. And then maybe in this context, I think the letter size 8.5 by 11 is kind of a universal size that people feel very comfortable with, and they see it a lot in different places, classroom, bookshop, presentations. But at the other side, one place standard can be also exclusive to other people, for example.
Correct.
I think it's really related to everyday experience. For example, when you move to a new country, there's so many things that you have to adapt. And then you realize that you're learning a new system of standards. And I often find it somehow a little bit struggle. Yeah, when I moved to the US, it's like excitement. Oh, I'm learning new things every single day. But also, you have to, as you said, calibrate your brain the whole time to adapt to the
This is true.
system.
This is true. I mean, being aware of this idea of standard is a bit tricky, but we can avoid it. I mean, we live somewhere all the time, so there's no detachment from the physicality and requirements and all the logistics of living somewhere. But being aware of this is important, and knowing that is good.
Yeah, being aware that you have to do this calibration all the time, yeah, in order to adapt to a new context. It could be a conversation, it could be happening in the office, it could happen in everywhere, that this calibration is ongoing. Do you think is that related to your experience of moving?
Yeah, it's part of not only my art practice, but my living every day in an everyday scenario. I imagine, like, from converting centimeter and meter to inches and feet, which is something that I'm not still used to it after so many years. But even like talking about the standard, we can detach this artwork from the maker of it, and we can detach the maker from the place that he has been living in. But I hope the idea of this accessibility and connectivity of language can be translated and transformed into so many, or maybe every other part of the world. But we can hope so.
Interesting. So I always wonder, because when we talk about adaptation, calibration, it's like a one-way transaction. You know,
Mhm.
you as an immigrant, you adapt to the US, you adapt to the standards here. Do you think in the possible future, this kind of relationship can also be reversed? Like a land can also adapt to like another culture.
I'm trying to understand. Now, how come? Can you just give one example? Like
For example, you go to the office, right? You want to apply for paperwork. You see, in some office in the United States, they already have translated their formula or paperwork into different kind of languages. So that is accessibility. For they don't assume everybody here speaks perfect English. So for avoiding the mistake or avoiding the complications for the applicants or for the people, they translate them into different languages. So I see this is a form of adaptation, uh, like a reverse adaptation from the lands to the people. So I wonder.
in here, you said in New York, right?
Yeah, in New York, for example, I lived in Germany for 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I go to the office, I must speak German because of there's no other. This is not a criticism, but there's no English version. Almost not. And they are forbidden to speak English to you because if they make a mistake in their work because of the language, the fault is on them. So they have to speak German to you, even though their English is good for you. Because I imagine every immigrant, when they move to a new country, they put a lot of effort in understanding this place tradition, in understanding custom, in understanding how the logistic works.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if in the future, like say 20 years later from now on, if it's possible, the state I'm talking about, every country could make it possible for immigrants. I think it's making sense because I think in the future
It does.
the border will be loosened, quote unquote. Like a migration is such a norm in humanity, human history, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a good example. I mean, I've never lived somewhere else like I did in the U.S. You have lived. I'm interested that we talked about Germany today also.
Yes.
And but I think it's not very far fetched to think about this. Well, I don't know what that near future is, but I think New York is a very good example. I mean, it's maybe the most progressive environment doing such a thing with all those shortcomings, whatever. We are seeing some progression towards this, tapestry of ideas and engagement of people and accepting the differences. I'm happy to see this here. I don't know if that's exactly what you were.
Yeah, I guess it's a very difficult question because nobody would be able to foresee the future of the politics, for example. And so it's very difficult to foresee another scenario, like what would be better for immigrants.
Correct.
Like what kind of living experience that we could have as easier than what we are having right now.
And in this scenario, I mean, in that reverse sort of, if I can call it, immigration, the immigration would have a different meaning.
Yeah, the immigration would be a norm. And then the settlement just stay there generation to generation for 100 years. That would be something that is
Exactly.
rare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the starting topic we had today. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of seeing immigration in also very new ways. I have a play, like a word play with the word immigration, because the word is starts with I double M migration, right?
Yeah.
And also we have migration
Yes.
that doesn't have IM in the beginning, right? So as we know, migration is a general meaning, has a general meaning. It can be like a short stay, short move, or permanent move. But immigration is moving from one place to another, permanently. In fact, immigration is a sub version of migration.
Yes.
Okay? So I have a play with that I am in the beginning is I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Migrating.
I am migration. I am migration. And this I is part of that process of migration. Because I started to evolve in that process. I becomes a different I with every move in the migration. So migration becomes immigration, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't want to make it very too philosophical, but I think that it goes back to your idea of definition of I, because now I is defined by immigration. Maybe in near future, it gets reversed.
Interesting. Are you saying it get reversed? That means.
So we change the meaning of immigration, right? So as we say, you don't get changed dramatically by the only person from your colony to move to another part of the world. But in that scenario, imaginary scenario, you are one of so many other people that are doing it. Some exceptions are just settlers. The rest are just moving all the way.
That's interesting. I think it's very powerful, because that means migration shaped the world. I think this is a very old, or this is old truth. Like everybody knows about that, but I'm thinking about immigrants would actually shape this land. I think the most distinct example is, of course, in Europe, but it can also happen elsewhere in the world. But I can imagine that would create a big chaos. But chaos kind of means democracy.
That scenario that you said, like that permanent moving from one place to another, you mean?
Yes, because if you think about why we are having certain rules or standards, it's because of the settlers here, that they have their own standards and rules. What if like immigrants also have their own rules? So if one place have, let's say, 7, 8 or multiple rules, that must create chaos, because how do rules communicate with each other? That could change a lot of things that we can't imagine.
It does change. I'm not sure if I agree with the chaos, because it happens. If it does, it happens very organically and gradually. Let's think about the expat communities around the world, especially during and after COVID time. So many people, so many places in the world, South Asia, Central America, are very expat friendly. Why? Expense, accessibility to some accommodation, remote working, also how people can find similar-minded fellows. So many things that are essential for survival and thrive as a person who is moving all the time. Okay, I'm done 2 months here, I'm gonna go somewhere else. Can I still find a new networks of people? Yes. Can I still have my own job and security financially? Yes. Can I have da da da, etc., etc.? And when all these things are fulfilled, that environment, that place, let's say expat friendly place number one, is going to thrive economically because people come, people go, people come, people go, and this changes the whole ecosystem. But these stuff happens if in all places very organically, as you said. So that chaos that you said probably happens when one context is not ready for that.
Interesting. Interesting. I really like what you said about like the soil that actually helps this organic adaptation to happen in places. Yeah, and the other day I was checking the Instagram ad, and then there's a AR glasses that could translate different languages like from your eyes. So I just imagine if that would become a convention in the future that we can talk, but you can say Farsi, I can say in Chinese.
But we still have a conversation.
Yeah, I think we can, and then in this way the soundscape would be very interesting.
Yeah.
So
that's not too far, I think.
Yeah, but that's the chaos I'm talking about. It's like maybe it's not a negative word, but it's dynamic. It's also dynamic, like what you see, experience become very different.
Correct.
But I can also imagine this can also lead to some kind of exhaustion because the constantly changing, getting out of your habit is not embedded in human brain because human brain looks for patterns.
Correct. To find a norm, so that maybe it goes back to the survival, energy and survival, need. So yeah, the pattern probably.
Yeah, you're right. I think when you talk about survival, we're actually talking about, okay, can I be able to know the patterns well? That means I know how the things work in this continent, or how the things work in this place. So I'm able to be creative on the top of the norms. I also found the short story that you wrote about is very interesting and engaging. It's called My Name is Alex.
Correct.
It talks about your experience of ordering a coffee in Starbuck, and then the person who works in the coffee shop has to guess your name or has to put your name on the coffee cup that you're ordering, and then they don't know how to write your name. And so it pushes you to reflect on the meaning of your name. And then at other point, it's also at the end, you made a bold choice to go with a Western name so people would have no problem to write it down. I think it's a very interesting story that you're writing about, because for me as a reader, I'm thinking about, so do we compromise? When we come to another country, do we compromise our standard? Do we compromise how we deal with the world?
Compromise. I mean, it's more. It's compromise, and at the same time, discovery and enjoyment of that.
Oh yes, so it's also playful.
Yeah.
It's also playful to call yourself Alex, even though you're Ali.
Yes, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
And at the same time, I was like, what if I call myself someone else? What if I create a new name for myself every time? Does anyone know? No. But that's interesting. Just to be called someone else, that it doesn't happen without detachment or relocation to a new, unknown place.
Yeah.
I think also the Starbucks is maybe the context that most immigrants in the US are familiar with because
Starbucks, yeah.
yeah, it's a very it has a agency of commercial franchise
Yes.
industrial but at the same time popular, right?
Yeah, pop culture.
Pop culture, and this name or labeling in that happens a lot. You are familiar with that, but that location is not familiar with you, or they don't know you. You know them. They don't know your name because that's just a name on the cup of coffee that could be spelled in a wrong way every single time.
I actually hate that. I was thinking, wow, I know they're going to spell it in the wrong way, but I'm still going to say my name. My name is Yaching, and every time it spells differently, so it's almost like a.
So you had to maybe just go with abbreviation, right, or something more easily, or how was that compromise for you?
No, I will try to spell it.
Completely.
Make sure they get it. Yaching. My name, Yaching.
And that's it, pretty.
Yeah, because my original name with Chinese characters is even more complicated. So, yeah, it's a very interesting, strange system of, getting a coffee because they assume that the name is simple enough that they can write it down, they can figure that out in 2 seconds, but it's not.
Yeah.
That we have.
What if it's longer? What if it's like 3 parts?
Exactly. What is if it's 3 part? What if it's in a very completely different language that cannot be.
So can I ask you a question now?
Yeah.
Speaking of compromise, and going back to the idea of adaptation that you mentioned like a few minutes back, why not you, not just you, like an immigrant, compromise here because that person is trying to write down the name on the cup of coffee and it's too long and it's hard to do the process of communication. It slows down the process. Is this something that is also considered as like a mutual compromise or no?
Yes, I think out of my arrogance. I did compromise and wrote my name already.
I'm sure my name was short enough not to get compromised.
Yes, I also.
But like your name. Your name is very beautiful.
Yes.
Well, I don't know about that, like a longer version of that you said.
No, I mean it's Chinese writing. We have strokes, and I'm already compromising it by saying my name in English.
So that's true.
So this is already my compromise.
Compromise version of that.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah.
That's true. Have you ever tried your original name with no compromise to see what happens?
I think every of my friends should learn how to write my Chinese.
So please teach me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please learn it.
Yeah, learn it. That's important.
Tell me, I will teach you about it.
Right, definitely.
Yes. Also, we can have a workshop of learning Yaching's name.
Exactly, right?
Just to be there, and then I give you a piece of paper, and you just trace my name.
We call it no compromise.
No compromise, yes. I learn all of your name in English.
That's true. That's so true.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that this is a good idea that all the foreigners be gathering together and then we just learn each other's name.
With no compromise?
With no compromise! And you teach me how to write in Farsi, I teach you how to write in Chinese about my name. So, let's say a group of 8 people.
That would be interesting. I heard one quote or saying somewhere, I forgot where exactly. It was very simple but thoughtful. And I still remember it. It was like, no name is too long. to remember. So it was talking about how if you don't remember, it's our ignorance.
Yeah, if
You
you
know?
don't remember, it's your problem. It's not my problem. It's not my name is too long or too complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless of like if we agree or disagree with that, it's a matter of investment and attention, and right?
Yes, I think you're right. I think maybe this is a bit more emotional topic to me. When I was younger, I was being so ignored by my surroundings, and then I went to this art studio to learn painting when I was very young, and that's the first person in my life that is very attentive to what I'm doing. Yeah, I felt like my teacher's attention that put it on me really sculpt to who I am today.
Well,
Yeah, because of that attention has a weight, has a meaning. It's valuable to me.
that's so true. I mean, because the name also, you're talking about name, going back to the essay, uh, it's very rooted in our identity. But maybe I have a different opinion about that identity. If you remember the very last sentence
Yes.
of the essay, personal essay, when I get the coffee cup with the new name on it, which is Alex,
Yes.
then what happens? I say, now me, Ali, and Alex all go away.
Yes.
And I'm just talking about how we all, go out of the coffee shop and walk away. And in that sentence, I'm trying to distinguish between names, identity, true self. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Don't ask me.
Yeah,
But
right.
I'm like, yeah, some people, maybe you are one of those people that believe
I'm
that.
not one of those people, but go ahead.
They're like, okay, name. This is my name. This is my identity, period. So I don't disagree with that. I respect that. But I feel like, because going back to the idea of nomadism, this is also one thing that I was trying to play with, which is very risky, I know. Most people don't like to play with that idea because of very sensitive type of,
Understand. So you were talking about like a name is also just a symbol, like a title. Like it can connect with the meaning of your identity and it cannot. So,
That's true, exactly. I mean, I was born with a name till one age, and then I did the immigration. Maybe I pick up another name, and with each decision, a new identity, new stories gets associated with a new name. If I change my name just now today, it's very strange in the beginning, but gradually, you create some new stories for that name. I know most people don't want to even do that or take that risk, but I think that is because I'm a risk-taking person. I did that literally with that thing. Maybe that personal essay, my name is Alex, was like a symbol, but at the same time, a real story for me to just play with that idea, to see how everything goes. So maybe I was not so bothered with that, and I was more playful with the idea.
Interesting. I suggest the only order coffee in Starbucks. Oh, but actually, Starbucks is not my favorite coffee shop. I'm not promoting Starbucks here,
Yeah,
and I'm
what's-
not saying everyone should go to Starbucks. But next time you go to Starbucks, you can use another name. Like each time you go to
Complete name.
Starbucks, a completely different name. You see how
Oh, yeah?
you feel. Yeah.
How it feels, right?
Yeah.
So also another version is that as Yaching said, go with one no compromise, complete, name as long as you want. The other time, go with a completely new, imaginary name. See what happens.
Yeah, I think both way works, and then you don't have to stick with one idea. You can always
Of course. Yeah.
I think this is a very beautiful talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Yaching. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, and thank you for listening today's episode on our podcast. We are available on YouTube Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Pocket Podcasts. See you next week. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.